Cummins, also Carly Steffens, and I chose to do my action research over the importance of positive student-teacher relationships for learning in student-perceived difficult courses. I came up on this topic or chose this topic for a multitude of reasons, but at the end of the day, it is very near and dear to me. It started with my first year teaching, and I was having a conversation with one of my peers, and I had this student that for everyone else was a bad kid. And for me, he was this wonderful kid that turned all of his work in, and I never had any problems with him. And so my peer was asking, what's my secret? Why does he work for me? Because I had him in chemistry, and I believe this was his English teacher, and I couldn't give her a clear answer. I wasn't sure at that point. I just knew that he trusted me, and he would talk to me about things, and I would actually listen to him, and he was never an issue. Fast forward a few years, I found this to be something that occurred somewhat regularly, where the quote-unquote bad kids, or the kids that just weren't very academically engaged, were fully engaged in my course and respectful and all of those things that we hope our students can be, which is where I started thinking, well, why is that? Why is he more successful for me but not his other courses? So that's where the root of this question kind of began. Beyond that, I have at times, one of my other positions, I worked at the Museum of Natural Science in Houston, and in presenting professional development over the summers, one of my peers had presented on the science of learning and how our brain works, and how and just basically differentiation based on the way we learn, which intrigued my brain and made me want to learn more about that as well, because that's really interesting. From there, I started looking into the effects of stress in learning. And actually, it's a book, but it's really a collection of articles. It's called the Stress Concepts, Cognition, Emotion, and Behavior. In reading through some of this book, I started learning and realizing that, wow, stress has this major, major impact, both positive stress and negative stress. And I know that's kind of a hard concept to think about stress as a positive thing. But even when we're excited to go on vacation, that is still an outside stressor. When you're excited about prom, or you're excited about something, or even anxious for something to happen, it's not always a negative feeling. There are times when that is a positive feeling. And really understanding the difference between the two and what that does to your body, hormones that it releases, all of that kind of stuff, is incredibly interesting. And then I stumbled onto a book by Sousa called How the Brain Learns. And in this study, he actually, and there have been many of these studies, took images, MRI images of the brain while showing positive images versus negative images. And what he found was that when those positive images were being shown, the part of the brain that lit up is where we create and store our memories, which led him to want to test that further, and leads me to want to test that further. I just don't have access to an MRI. So that's really how I came about this topic, and where it really became something incredibly interesting and really a passion project for me. So moving on to how do we take all of these things and all of this information and apply it? Obviously, I am not the first person to investigate the importance of your student-teacher relationships. There's many, many of those out there. However, something that I noticed was very few of them actually even mention the way our brain works and how we learn. And while it talks about all of the things that are great about having a positive relationship, there's no backing proof with that envelops or includes the brain research part of it. And that's something that I want to really, really influence and just make sure that that's there. So when it comes to my methods, first of all, just to briefly mention it, we'll talk about our settings, our participants, our data sources, and analysis. So as far as the setting goes, it will be a high school physics classroom. I work very hard to make sure that even though it is a lab with student desks as well as lab tables, to make it a very warm and welcoming environment. That's something that is so imperative for students and is something that's so easy to achieve and prevent any sorry about that. It's just something that's very easy to do. And think about it this way: when you walk in somewhere that you don't feel welcome or it just doesn't feel safe, which unfortunately a lot of schools kind of give that feeling now, especially with everything going on, you don't want to be there. And if you already don't want to be there, then what is going to promote you to pay attention and want to learn? So your setting is actually also part of the study as well, because that is step one of creating that student-teacher relationship. Our participants obviously are teachers and our students. I plan to study my physics students and keep track of them. And this is something that I think really helps drive it home. There is no significant learning that can occur without a significant relationship. And that's where the students and the teacher, that it's so important. I can't stress enough how important that is. And as far as data goes, this one gets a little bit complicated with the science background and knowing where I want to go. It took me a while to narrow down and to really streamline the different sources of information. I do plan to study throughout the school year, and since I won't have I won't have any background knowledge of my students when I first get them, I do plan to do a parent as well as a student survey in order to sort of create a baseline, just asking if they tend to have positive relationships with their teachers, or are they a good student? Do they turn in their work? Are they normally an A student? Do they have a lot of absences? Things like that can contribute, because no two kids are alike. And if you don't know that background and set what I'm calling a baseline for each student, then you don't have much to go on in terms of, was this successful, or do you have a positive relationship? There could be a shy child that you're kind of not sure, and having these surveys that help you start that out. Well, okay, he's shy, so even getting a smile or a nod out of them is a big deal. So that's one of the big things. That's where I want to start with, having a baseline for each student. From there, I will do my own observations. I also plan to invite unbiased students as well as other teachers to come in and observe each unit and write down their observations in terms of behavior, success, engagement, the typical parameters. I also plan to use their involvement or engagement in the unit, as well as any grades that they get, behavior, and a student survey so that I can get their perception of relationship, or was this difficult, or do I feel like I was successful? And then I'm also plan on doing my observations. Um, and taking all of that and comparing it to their baseline in order to really determine, was this unit successful, was it not, was there a student teacher relationship that was positive, or were there some issues possibly that were going on during this unit. And I plan to do this for each unit throughout the school year. And then at the end of the year, I plan to repeat the original survey just for the student, not the parent, and compare those answers from beginning to end, just to fully ensure that I have taken into account their perception and how they feel, and just really getting all sides of the story, to make sure that we aren't creating, or I'm not missing anything out. And that's the other big reason for having someone come in that is an outsider, not just as a teacher but also as a student, so that you do get the full picture and not just what you see through your own eyes. As far as the data analysis, I've gone back and forth because I will have some quantitative information, and I'll also have qualitative information. However, the way I plan on executing all of these surveys and the way that I will gather the information really means that I'm learning with the information as it comes in, and may be adjusting as well. So that being said, I've actually determined that the best method is the triangulation mixed method. I really do believe that, given the length of time that the study will be over, and in order to get the most accurate and most viable results, you have to evolve with what you're seeing. And who knows, I may have a question that should have been on the student surveys that I left out. And by constantly regrouping and assessing and reevaluating, am able to catch, instead of that being missed out throughout the entire study. So that's the main reason for choosing the triangulation mixed method. And beyond that, I feel that by being or keeping some clear and honest communication between myself and my students, keeping an environment of laughter is ultimately going to help them remain engaged. And I believe that all of those times that I had the quote unquote bad kid, and for me they were not bad at all, is going to be proven through showing that, building those relationships and really creating that trust, that they can trust you and they can come to you. That is going to help keep them engaged and really promote their learning. And then here are my references. I have quite a few. Like I said, you'll see the book come up often of the stress book, the concepts, cognition, emotion, and behavior. Like I said, it was more a collection of articles than a book. And last but not least, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen, and I've had a wonderful semester and enjoyed learning from each of you. Thanks.